On this episode of the Amp'd UP211 podcast, we're sitting down with the incredibly inspiring Billy Brimblecom. Billy is not only a lifelong musician and the CEO of Steps of Faith, but he's also the co-creator of Thundergong, an annual rock and roll comedy benefit alongside his good friend, Jason Sudeikis. After losing his leg to cancer at 28, Billy fought back, continuing to rock out on the drums while dedicating his life to helping others regain mobility and independence. Billy Brimblecom is here today. My friend, how are you?
I'm all right, man. Long time coming.
Yes, sir. We've been chatting back and forth.
Yes.
But here we are, and I just want to smash that Thundergong, my friend.
Yeah. It's what you do.
I'm excited, man. I was, of course, following you online as I do, and it sounds like we're sold out for November.
Yeah. It's crazy. Even last year, we had people from literally all over the world, Australia, UK, Armenia, here with us in Kansas City, but it didn't sell out till like 2 weeks beforehand.
Got it.
And then this year we've sold out 2 months beforehand. Usually we would put tickets on sale like around now, about 2 months out.
Yeah.
And we put them on sale 3 months out. Yeah. And sold out faster than ever and haven't even really announced that many folks yet. So that's good.
Well,
Yeah.
Congratulations. I do want to do a deeper dive into Thundergong, its history, Jason Sudeikis, all of that, really cool kind of synergy that's been going on for years now. Was getting super excited. When I was doing show prep, I was watching some of the interviews that you and Jason did, and it just got me really, really excited about, what you bring to this community. It's an extraordinary endeavor. And the thing I think that really inspired me, there was this video that you did, and I think you were speaking somewhere, and you were talking about your musical history and all that stuff, which is fascinating to me as a drummer, but you sort of funneled it all down to this, which was, here I am doing what I love, drumming, playing rock star, and I get to help this community that I'm a part of, and I get to do it with all these really, really cool people. And I thought, man, that's just got to be like magical moment type of stuff where you're thinking, this thing that happened to me, right, losing a limb, sort of set me in this place. It put me here, and I embraced it. And look what I've been able to get out of it. If you want to call it an ROI, the return on this investment of pain and suffering has been pretty extraordinary, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah, that was probably from, I've shared that sentiment when I do speaking things and whatnot, and I think a lot of that is kind of like, I could say a lot about that, but yeah, I'm really, really lucky. And also some of it is kind of like, how can I word this? Naivete as a weapon. I don't have a nonprofit management degree or something. So what we have built and made is just we've done it in the way that comes most naturally to us, like I always say, even when it comes to the fundraiser, golf tournaments, galas, and 5Ks are very tried and true fundraising techniques. That's why people do them over and over and over again. I don't know how to do those things. I've tried, but I do know how to put on a concert and a comedy show. And that's what we do with Thundergong. So really, even the whole organization, I mean, it's again, not having, I don't have a degree in anything. I went to college to study jazz music, and did not graduate. because I joined a rock band and then was already playing professionally, you know? So, so really even the way I view, you know, how I run Steps of Faith is kind of like a band, you know? I mean, it's very much an artistic endeavor just because it's the way I have done business since I was 11 years old, you know, as a musician, which, you know, it's kind of funny because this isn't this way in other parts of the world, but like in America, there's kind of like the, you know, the incorrect stereotype, at least for the most part, that like musicians are like dumb degenerates, you know? And in a lot of other parts of the world, you know, musicians are celebrated, like the government pays for your tour bus, kind of things like that. I mean, even in Canada,
Sure.
you know, that's a thing. But, you know, I realized, you know, I have transferable skills, you know, and as a musician, I have been, you know, playing and booking my own shows, even if it was a grade school talent show since I was 11 years old.
Yeah.
You know, I was playing in clubs from the time I was 16, you know. So anyway, yes, a lot of it is just not knowing better.
Yeah. And very much building, you know, somewhat of a managerial skill set. And maybe not even necessarily making that connection. But I will tell you this, as someone who runs a company myself, I find when I'm recruiting, some of the most valuable people, or what turn out to be the most valuable people, are creatively minded. Because one of the things I always ask is, what are your hobbies? What do you do? Like, what's your free time like? And when someone says, oh, I love painting with watercolor, I go, oh, that's interesting. Or I'm a musician. I say, oh, that's interesting. And this may have nothing to do, even in the slightest regard, to what I'm hiring them for. But I think I need that type of mind. I need someone that can play in that creative space and gets excited about what we would call, you know, when you talk about booking shows and, you know, creating captivating events, someone who has that, you know, kind of creative monster that they want to feed. And it's this insatiable appetite to create things from nothing. And so often my best people are creatives. They're just, some of my best salespeople are creatives. Some of my best, you know, plant foremen are creatives. And I say to anyone in education, man, those programs are so important. Like, make sure that we don't lose that. Make sure that kids still have an opportunity to explore an instrument, or to paint, or to do something with creative writing, something where they're using their imagination, because so much of, you know, that part of your skill set, I feel like, is important. And when I started researching deeper, because I've always followed you, as you're well aware, I was like 3 months into the podcast. I'm like, hey, Billy, come on. You're like, yeah.
It's another amputee drummer.
You're like, yeah, keep chasing, man. We'll get it on. We'll get it on. Just keep chasing. It's cool. It's cool. It's gonna happen. I you know, went a little bit deeper into your musical background, and I, you know, the similarities between us, and this may just be common of most drummers, the way we end up in these garage bands, and we're running around with demo tapes, and we're playing in clubs and bars underage, and, you know, we're waiting in the alleyway because we can't be in the venue until we actually perform, you know, stuff like that. And
does one of you guys have your dad here? Is that your dad? Yeah, that's my dad. Okay. You can stay in here, but you're going on first and then have to immediately leave afterwards.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And I was also very fortunate too, that I had a pretty good group of friends that were 21 and up, even when I was like 15 and 16. So I was like, hey, Luke, you got to come along, because we need someone who's, you know, legal that can actually escort us in and out of this building. So there's so many, touch points where I thought, gosh, so much of our stories are similar. I believe you started playing, what was it, 11, 12, something in that area?
11. Yeah,
Okay.
1988.
Yeah. And just like yourself, my father bought me my first drum set. I mean, I had that toy drum set at 5, with the paper drum heads,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think I lost the sticks and like put spoons through it at some point, and then we
There you
just
go.
then we just got rid of that. But
Yeah,
you know, being a musician has always been a critical piece of my life, and wanting to still, even at the age that I'm at now, certainly not go on the road and live that lifestyle, but wanting to feel that energy, experience that live connection, even if for just a few nights a year, and sort of, revisit that nostalgic energy of playing live, feeling that, that swell, that power of being behind a drum kit and doing all of that is still, very, very important to me. And not that I want to do it every weekend, and not that I want to, drive around, in a dirty van with my gear anymore, but having an opportunity to share music with others and do it in a way that, can be purposeful and to the betterment of a community, I think is wonderful. And I'm only jealous that I will not be there in November, but it's something that I definitely want to attend at some point. So
yeah.
I'm hoping that this is not the last year. Uh,
I
and
hope so too.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I have a hell of a lot of respect for you, given that I think you said it in an interview as well. Nonprofit or not, it's you got to run the business. It's a business, and
oh yeah.
there's many components to that. And I very much appreciate your no nonsense attitude when it comes to fundraising, because I have met a lot of people in the fundraising space, and they're kind of passive in that regard, where they don't really say, "Hey, we need some money." Like,
Yeah,
if this is going to work, we need money. We need donations. And I appreciate how you come at that sort of head on. Like, if we're going to get the help that people need and meet the mission statement of what we're trying to do, we need help. And it's a bold way to go about it. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for the way in which you approach it, because very often it's sort of like this, we sort of hope and pray that we're going to get those returns, but no one ever really says the words. And I'm like,
mm.
put it out there. Like, hey
Yeah,
man, no donation is too small. However, we'll take the big ones too. Bring it,
hmm.
because we've got a
Yeah,
mission and we're trying to help people. So, congrats again, selling out Thundergong. I want to talk a little bit more about your amputation and the extraordinary sort of circumstances for people that don't know, how all that came about. You were in the midst of a very blossoming, even you could argue thriving, musical career. And I believe it was '05, correct? That
yeah.
a lot of things changed for you. Why don't you roll us through that? And, your story is out there, but, for our listeners' benefit, I think it would be great coming from you.
Yeah, yeah. No, thanks for saying all that. Yeah, I mean, to the fundraising thing, just really quick, it's kind of like drumming. Just be intentional. What are we doing?
Yep.
Boom, chick.
Yep.
You know. was
Yep.
at church the other day, and this guy's playing a cajon like he's afraid of it, like he's going to upset it. There's a low sound, there's a high sound. Hit them. Like, let the sound guy do his job. You could hit that with a baseball bat. It's not going to be that loud.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it's the same kind of thing. It's just like I learned the hard way of the soft ask or not making an ask at all. Then
Yeah.
you don't get money. Sometimes you can be clear and not beat people over the head with it. So yes. Anyway, losing my leg. Yeah. So 1999, I was in this really terrible car accident caused by the snow on the highway, and slipping and sliding and slammed on the brakes, and then the momentum, car starts sliding. And anyway, the jaws of life were used. They're a real thing, jaws of life. They cut the top of my pickup truck off. Had to use the jaws of life. It was all smashed basically against me. And excuse me. So that was, cheating death the first time. I broke my back to an extent. I had a compression fracture on a few vertebrae and all sorts of other little ancillary injuries, a bunch of glass in my hands. It was awful. Later that summer, it was in February, so it was snowy. Later that summer, in the middle of the night, my left ankle started hurting really bad, woke me up, and it hurt bad, and slept like crap for 3 nights, and then went away and didn't hurt for 3 months or more. Long story short, I had it looked at a time or two, didn't know what was happening. Eventually, we determined it was, unofficially something related to that accident, and it was some sort of undiagnosed trauma and some sort of, we thought, nerve damage that had resulted from that accident. So then basically it started happening more often, hurting worse, hurting longer. So finally, at the beginning of 2005, when it had been getting really bad, I went to a neurologist to have the nerve damage checked out. He said, this is not a neurological issue. And I was like, this guy's full of crap, and was like mad. And then we went and got an ultrasound. And then my doctor was like, you have something that's the size of a large apple in your ankle. And I was like, what? And then, he's not supposed to say this. And I saw him years later, and he was like, I did something very, very wrong. But he did me a favor, because he not supposed to say it or not, he said it. And what it did was I didn't start freaking out earlier than I needed to, or really, what I'm saying is, he said, you have something the size of a large apple in your ankle, but don't worry, if you've had this pain for 6 years, it's nothing that's going to kill you. So it was something that was very much, I later learned I didn't have cancer for those 6 years, because I would have been dead a couple times over. But yeah, so I had, and from there it was just test, biopsy. There's some sort of cancer. 7 days later, okay, we thought it was lymphoma. We wish it was lymphoma. It's actually this thing called Ewing sarcoma. You definitely have not had Ewing sarcoma since 1999. So, but whatever, there was something going on there, and then the cancer set up shop in that undiagnosed trauma. Anyway, so that was kind of the path to figuring out what the heck was going on. And so when I learned all that, I had learned before we knew exactly the diagnosis of Ewing sarcoma, my orthopedist, Dr. Howard Rosenthal, who, spoiler alert, I survived. And that's because of him, and my oncologist, Dr. Mark Myron, who's retired and living it up, hopefully. He said, okay, here's all the things that we think this could be. And okay, so it could be this. If it's this, here's what the protocol will be. And they had said, if it is a sarcoma, you have to remove the sarcoma and then everything that it is touching. And I was like, and kind of thinking, well, it's touching everything. And then he said, the only reason you would lose your leg would be to save your life. So we still weren't, even when I was diagnosed, we still weren't 100% sure that I was going to lose my leg. There was a few limb salvage options. All of them required a very gnarly surgery.
Yeah.
So got into chemo right away after a bunch of other tests to make sure it hadn't spread anywhere else. Thank God it had not. And basically, long story long at this point that was kind of like the beginning of the year. Got into chemo right away, like around St. Patrick's Day. Learned I was going to lose my leg like over the summer, in like July, and then August 4th, 2005 was my surgery, and then remained and got back into chemo and did that till like the beginning of December of '05. So it was quite the year.
So given that this was in your ankle, was it more of an exercise in managing the margin that you went up uh, above the knee? Was it just making
Yeah,
sure? Because someone would say, well,
yeah,
gosh, they took that much. But from what I know about cancer, it's this odds kind of thing where you're like,
yes,
hey, we got to be really far away from this to make sure that nothing has traveled to that part of your body. Um, so
yes.
I'm assuming that was how it was explained to you.
Yeah, yeah. It was like my dad last summer had like a little skin cancer thing on his back, and they're like,
Okay.
"Oh, it's the bad skin cancer," but like, and it was like a pin, like the size of like a pinhead, but they took like the size of like a penny, or maybe even a quarter, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
real
yeah.
big. So yeah, it's margins. That's the word they use, right? So it was in my ankle. I'm not that tall of a guy, so it's not that long of an ankle, 5'8.5". But not that long of an ankle to begin with. But also at that point, it was big enough and high enough up on my ankle that had they taken it, I'd have been like maybe knee dysartic. If we're going to really get in the weeds, amputee language. That's what this podcast is about, I suppose. And so it really was kind of like, we're going to take it, and my amputation is right above the knee, 3 inches above the knee. So I can be a difficult fit, but fortunately, other than one time, I've had really excellent prosthetists. So, but yeah, so it was a matter of margins, but also it's like, okay, yeah, I could have maybe been a knee dysartic margin wise, but like, well, let's go right above. And then, so while I don't have my knee, you know, I don't, there are, you know, AKs that are in way better shape than I am, for instance, that limp harder. And that's just based on where their amputation is versus mine. You
Mm.
know what I mean? I'm not super tall. It's right above the knee. So, I limp, but it's not extreme. Some days are worse than others, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I would think just because you're right above the knee, you've got still a pretty decent amount of residual limb, because I've
Yeah.
seen AKs that it's I mean, it goes pretty high, and I would think that
Yes.
that presents, its own spectrum of problems, issues, things like that. And from what I had read too, given you were, and you can clear this up for me, given that you were sort of in the midst of either touring or you're recording an album, you were kind of, you know, they the group that you were with had found a substitute drummer, but then you kind of quickly kind of jumped right back on the drum throne, and it would appear to me, at least on paper, it was pretty fast that you were sort of like back in action.
Yeah. It's funny because, like, at the time, it felt like forever, but in retrospect, it was pretty fast. And I think, in particular, since I know the stories of, you know, I don't even know what it is now, 1,500 amputees that we've helped or whatever with Steps of Faith, it's like, oh, that's very fast. You know what I mean? Especially comparatively. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So yeah, no, we were, the band was pretty new. We had all this promise. We were going to make a record and all that. Played our first show. I think I'd started the testing in that around that time. A week after the first show we played, in early 2005. That's when I was diagnosed. So then we were like, okay. Then we kind of figured out, the first time after I do all the tests and find out where it is and it's not spread and all that kind of stuff, and to meet with the oncologist, then it's kind of like getting the prison sentence. Like, here's what the next several months, next year is going to look like. And then after that, my band and we had a meeting, and then was like, well, we don't know what's going to happen with me.
Yeah.
So let's get in and make the record. So we recorded the record, drums first, 14 songs, 2 days. You know, big cool rock record, Blackpool Lights, 2 words, Blackpool Lights, wherever you stream your music.
On Spotify.
And yes, Spotify. I'm a Spotify man. Yes. So, but no, yeah. And then actually the band left, like, it was either, I think it was the day before or the day of my surgery or whatever, with my blessing. And I helped do this to do a couple tours to kind of start setting up the record with a sub drummer. And then, so that was in August. And then we had been doing this annual Thanksgiving show, playing on Thanksgiving night. So Thanksgiving night that year, towards the end of chemo, I lost my leg. We did what my girlfriend at the time referred to, she's my wife now, as passing the torch back to its rightful owner. I got up and played the last song. Played the last song of the night.
How did that go?
Barely got through the song.
Yeah.
I mean, it great, but I was really. I've seen it back. It was good, but it was hard internally to make it happen. Sure. I just was so weak and depleted and all that. But yeah, then, I mean, I had been practicing. I'd practiced a song with the band. I'd had a drum kit set up in my apartment and had been playing, all the whole time.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were back on the road. I could barely walk. Just had a real basic hydraulic knee that had the friggin' and skin fit suction, but just with socks and no liner, and had the belt, just because my weight was all over the place. But we were on the road in March of 2006. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty quick. It's pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah.
Now I would think, being a drummer myself, I would think relative to, and not that I'm in any way, saying you're lucky. I mean, limb loss is not a lucky feeling. However,
sure.
Relative to what you could have lost as a drummer, being a right-handed player, I would think your left leg would be the limb of choice. I mean, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah. No, I'm very lucky. You can not say I'm lucky. I can. You can say whatever you want, but I will definitely say I'm lucky. And it just is kind of like it's ordained and meant to be. You know what I mean? It's like music is like a necessary element in life for me. Like I said, it's like how I do business. It's how I do relationships. It's how I do life. It's really like a lens that, I mean, I'm wearing a freaking Police t-shirt and have a Led Zeppelin tattoo. You know what I mean? And I didn't think about, I'm going to wear this shirt for this podcast. I actually was on my way and I was like, oh,
what am I wearing?
I don't know. Well, I was like, oh, this is good. Yeah, this is me. So it's just a part of who I am. Yeah, so I mean, as far as I'm still able to, had I been a guitar player that jumped around a bunch, I wouldn't have been able to jump around a bunch, but I'd still been able to play guitar. But it would have been hard as hell to make it through it. Honestly, to make it through a set in March of 2006.
Yeah, standing up
the whole time.
Absolutely.
For 45 minutes or whatever.
Oh, I'm
sitting down. That's why I was like, I just you sit down to play the drums. I mean, I couldn't load in my own gear barely. I could barely walk. But I also, the best I did some physical therapy, which was really, really helpful after losing my leg. But the best physical therapy, or really occupational therapy, was, albeit very dangerous, was going on tour so soon, because you're in a new city with new terrain in some usually small club with God knows what stairs and ramps and every stage that's not very well lit.
I was going to say, and it's dark.
It's dark. It's full of like tripods that are black that you can trip over. Able-bodied people are tripping over things when you're on stage. It's a nightmare.
There's cords everywhere. But you're like, oh no.
Totally, dude. Totally. But I never fell and stumble all the time. So that was really, I really feel like it helped me learn to walk better, faster, doing, that 3.5 week tour or whatever it was. So
I think you're right. I think when you're forced into that space, the thing I'm thankful for, I mean, I lost my right leg, so adapting to a kick drum was it was a journey, but I'm very
I bet.
thankful that I didn't lose, my hand, or my
Sure.
hands. I often think, because someone will say to me, what would you have rather lost? And I'm like, leg all the way. Like if I lost my
Yeah.
hands, I mean, I do everything with my hands. And,
Right.
my heart goes out to those amputees where they have to learn how to adapt in that regard. So,
Do you know Jason Barnes?
no,
Have you interviewed him?
no.
He's a friend of mine. He does Thundergong with us most of the time.
Yeah.
And he lost his right arm below the elbow in an electrical accident.
Wow.
And he is a fantastic drummer.
Really?
Fantastic drummer. I put that guy to work. We opened the first Thundergong show, 3 drum sets on stage.
Awesome.
All amputee drummers. Me, Cactus Mosier, my friend and board member, and one of my favorite people in the world, who's also a left leg AK drummer. He's very tall and has a higher up amputation.
Okay.
Husband, drummer, band leader, producer to Winona Judd. And then Jason Barnes, and we were doing. Sudeikis was singing "In the Air Tonight."
Yeah.
So 3 amputee drummers,
Yeah.
boom. And Barnes, yeah. And then the next song he played was friggin' War Pigs by Black Sabbath,
Oh,
and
no.
nailed it. Yeah, he has this amazing prosthesis that has been made for drumming, and then he worked with Google and these other folks and some people at Georgia Tech and made this incredible. You should interview him. I can introduce you guys. I mean, he's remarkable. He's a great friend. He's a bro, but made this insane drumming hand that he helped design to make it kind of feel more natural. And this, and I've seen it in action. He's incredible.
That's
So
awesome.
the good news is we didn't get to decide, you know what I mean? And that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's like the what if, I mean, but yes, I feel very lucky. And, I bet he would probably say the same.
Yeah.
He would probably be like, again, I'm not going to speak for him, but he might be like, oh yeah, thank God I got my kick drum leg. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the point is, moving forward and adapting, which you and I have done, and he has very much done as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because, when I hear you talk about how passionate you are about playing and having that experience, when I was post-op, I was so incredibly desperate to play, hadn't even been fitted with a prosthesis yet. So the thought was, well, how do I practice? I mean, I have no way to play. And then I thought, well, no, you do. You have a left leg. So I set up a remote pedal and, still playing a right-handed kit, but had a left pedal, closed my hi-hat, and I learned for 6 months how to play drums, not completely in reverse, but everything that I had wired myself to know with my right foot, I was now doing with my left foot. And believe it or not, and you can relate because you're a drummer, this is kind of like drummer nerd stuff. Everything is about independence, right? How do we get all our limbs to be able to do, how do I get my right hand to do what my left hand does? Or how do I get my left foot to do what my right foot does? And it really was an exercise for me in independence. And it very much developed my ear and my ability to get a lot more proficient with my left foot. Not even, and once I was in a prosthesis, I'm like, damn, I'm ready to go and, get back to business the way I'm used to playing. But it's that desire. And like you said, echoing what you were talking about with putting yourself in that situation where I've got to make this work somehow. I'm touring. I have to learn how to navigate these spaces. I have to learn how to adapt, not even in an overall sense, but on a daily basis, because I'm in these different venues. I'm in these different situations. I got to be very, very flexible in the way that I approach dealing with new environments, right? One of the first performances I ever did as an amputee drummer, Billy, I swear, I was like, I don't think I can get up on that drum riser.
Yeah.
And, when you're able-bodied, you just jump right up there. It's nothing.
Right.
I'll just hoist myself right up there.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I don't I think I need like maybe a little baby step to get up
Yeah.
there, you know?
Yeah.
But those are the things that we don't think about until we're thrust into that situation. And I do, I do recall bringing like a little aerobic step everywhere I went because I thought,
Yeah.
well, this is my little helper step if I need it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's no shame in that. Hey,
Yes.
man, I don't want to fall. I certainly don't want to create one of those really cool viral reels of a drummer like falling all over his drum set,
There's some good ones.
There
There's some
are.
good ones. Yeah. You don't want to be one, but yeah, you want
Exactly.
to watch them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, I appreciate that sentiment. Can you take us back to a little bit more about how you met Jason?
Yeah. We met, Jason and I met, I was 18. He was 19, 1995. Real long story short, we both got hired and were being trained. We both got hired at an improv comedy club at the same time.
Really?
And yeah, called Comedy Sports with a Z at the end. It's a franchise. There's several around the country, and there was one. I'm facing north here, looking towards downtown Kansas City right now. It's 3 minutes from where it was. 3 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. But yeah, I was a senior in high school, and I had asked. I knew one of my theater teachers was friends with the guy that owned Comedy Sports, and I needed to get a job in the spring and summer before I went to college. My mom was on my back to get a job, and so I asked my theater teacher. I said, hey, "Can you talk to your friend that owns Comedy Sports to see if I could maybe get an interview to be a server because
Oh,
they served like pizza and stuff there." Um, and so then the next day she's like, "Okay, here you go. Here's your info for Comedy Sports." And I was like, she was like, "Your audition is blah blah blah." I was like, "You have to audition to be a pizza server?"
did you have
She's
to
like,
be
"No, you're
funny?
auditioning to be in the." Well, she's like, "No, you're auditioning to be in the company."
Oh,
So it wasn't she. Their conversation didn't go from he's going to be a server. It's how old do you have to be to audition to be in the company? And so I auditioned and got in. So yes, you had
that's
to be funny.
that's
Um,
cool.
so I never served anything there, just laughs. Um, but yeah, no, Jason and I got hired at the same time, and then we were also then in a workshop class, a training class, basically. We got hired in the spring, and then basically through spring and all through summer, we were together being trained on the games they did. Comedy Sports is short form improv games, kind of like the show Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh, wow.
Um, for those who watch that,
Yeah.
but in a fake sporting format and that kind of thing. And family show, it's clean and everything. So, yeah, so that's how we met, and we were together all the time, training and going to all those classes together, and then we started doing shows, right around the time I had started college. Um, and then eventually, not too long after that, we were just together like every day, pretty much, because we were doing, for a good year or two, 30 plus shows a month, you know.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, just together all the time, just
Yeah, that's
fast friends, and
awesome.
have been, just been brothers ever since.
Yeah, best buds. So, I want to transition to Steps of Faith and then sort of create an intersection between Steps of Faith and Thundergong. Um, I'm assuming Steps of Faith and your involvement with that organization was first, and then that evolved into the idea of Thundergong. Do I have that right?
Yeah, yeah. Thundergong is our biggest fundraiser for the nonprofit. So yeah, yeah. Steps of Faith came first,
Yep.
and then I just had to figure out how to raise money.
Yep. And so, given that charitable space and coming up with those ideas, was that you and Jason just like riffing one day about what we could do to raise money and then Thundergong just became a thing? Where did that come from?
Yeah, a little bit. So it was my idea, but it evolved. You know, once we started brainstorming about it. So in 2006, so I had said earlier, I had that real basic hydraulic knee with the belt and all that kind of thing, and was touring with that thing. So in 2006, it got to the point, right, where my brilliant prosthetist, Doyle Collier, God rest his soul, passed away last year.
No, sorry.
But he was like, okay, it's time for your permanent prosthesis. So we all know it's not the actual permanent one, but it's the permanent type. So that's and that was a sea leg Autobach. And so my insurance, that in 2006, that was still kind of like, oh, new technology. And spoiler alert for your listeners, if you don't already know this, health insurance companies are awful. They help us, and they're also that no one is in the business of making money. Everyone is in the business of providing a service. You're an entertainer, you're a trash man, you're a carpenter, you're a teacher, et cetera, et cetera. If you do your job right, you'll make money. Health insurance companies are in the business of making money, and that is evident in their actions towards us as people that pay them every month, and even in how they treat prosthetists, doctors, medical professionals. So I'll jump off that soapbox. We had to come up with 30 grand in 2006. So very, very long story short, I had this appointment with my prosthetist where I learned this terrible news that I had to come up with 30 grand for this new robot leg. I happened to be meeting with my friend Corey, who was just a couple years older than me. But he actually, he trained Jason and I. So we, like I said, we were trained together in the same workshop class. Corey taught that class. So one of our best friends to this day. And then Corey just happened to be in town. We were having lunch. Came from the appointment. I met with him, and he was like, "So what's going on?" I was like, "Oh, I just got this terrible news." He's like, "Well, maybe we can help you raise the money." So Corey and his wife Monique put together these two shows that happened at the rock club, the cool rock club in Kansas City, Record Bar, that my friend owns. And what we did is we put on, my band played, another friend's band played. There was an improv comedy show with Corey and Monique, his wife, our friend Ed Goodman, Jason, his wife at the time, who has been a longtime board member, advisory board member, huge supporter. Her importance in the life of Steps of Faith cannot be overstated. Kay Cannon, she's a filmmaker. Look her up. But they did this improv show. So it was improv show, silent auction, rock show.
Yeah.
And we raised the 30 grand. So long story long, the whole thing with Thundergong was, the next day I was driving around with my girlfriend, now wife, and it was like, wouldn't it be cool if we did that next year for somebody that, like me, that needed the help? So we didn't do that. But then fast forward to Steps of Faith falling from the sky into my lap in 2013. And then I immediately thought of that fundraiser that Corey and Monique and Jason and all those folks did for me. And had talked to Jason about it that summer. A couple months later, I was still touring a little bit with the blessing of my new board of directors and that kind of thing. And I had talked to him about it. And he's like, "Oh, we'll do an event eventually," and blah, 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 blah. So no, I just had this thought that took many years, and moving back to Kansas City from Nashville. But I just had this thought to do something similar to that, again, I know how to put on a concert and a comedy show. And I like the idea of something that had a house band and a lot of people,
Yeah.
a lot of like guest singers and guest drummers and things like that.
Yep.
And so, and I took that idea to him. It's kind of like all of the things I just mentioned, plus like Live Aid.
Yeah, I was going to say,
just like this.
Yeah, it's like a Live Aid kind of vibe,
Yeah. And so, and originally it was actually, there was going to be a house band, and I just wanted it to be guest drummers. But I thought, Jason's friends with Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins from Foo Fighters, so we'll get these guest drummers that can sing.
Yeah.
And then it'll evolve into this other thing. Well, what it became was, the first two people that he talked to that said yes was Will Forte and Fred Armisen. So then it immediately shifted to where it was like, okay, there's going to be a house band. I'll play drums. There will be a lot of drums on stage. Again, we had 3 drum sets that first year. And then it's going to be these guys that are well known, but not well known for being a musician. I mean, Fred is known as being an actor and a musician and an incredible drummer.
Oh, sure.
Incredible at everything. But so then it was like, oh, well, that's better than just drummers.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how it evolved.
Yeah. That's a lot better. As far as Steps of Faith and how you go about intake and engaging, people in these situations. And, just to rewind a little bit, the whole insurance thing, I very much share your feelings about that. And it does grind my gears when I see
Yeah.
how this system is very much, for so many of us, engineered for failure. And
Yes.
this whole idea that the fittest, the most, you know, whatever you want to call it, glamorous of us, get the best stuff. And when really in truth, so many of the folks that do have deeper mobility issues have suffered, tremendous traumas, have chronic illnesses. These people need help too. And they need the cool stuff, the cool hardware, the best chips and knees and, hydraulic this and whatever that. And they just don't get them, Billy. They just don't get them. And that to me is it's a rub. And I get frustrated because the one thing that I learned when I became an amputee was, hey man, you're going to need to improve that K level because you're not going to get what you want. You're not in a fitness level that's probably going to work to your favor. And I thought, gosh, that's strange. And
Yeah.
certainly, I rose to the occasion and I'm in a very good place now. But for some amputees, that may not be possible until they get the right equipment, until they get the right tool to do the job.
Yeah.
And those expectations are just, again, engineered for failure. And I appreciate that you're very transparent about it. And you're kind of like, hey, man, this is BS. Like, what's going on and the way in which this is set up, um, it's just wrong. And I see so many people suffering and homebound and not being able to, obtain the resources. So kind of walk me through steps of faith and, your process in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on that note, I'll just say before I say what it is and how it works, it's ridiculous that steps of faith should need to exist in the United States of America.
Yes.
That said, um, uh, I'm thankful that we do, all things considered. What steps of we're a nonprofit 501c3 public charity, been around since it's been 11 years, 2013. The guy that was who owned the prosthetic clinic where I was a patient in Nashville, very long story, but he had established a 501c3, which is the tax exempt status. And it was a very good tax exempt idea that had been sitting dormant. And he and I, after I was asked to speak to a guy being fitted who lost his leg to cancer one day, I was like, I wish that could be my job. And so I ended up talking with the guy who owned the company, Rob Pittman is his name. And then we had a few conversations and he's like, I have an established 501c3, but it's been sitting dormant. Turns out running a nonprofit is just like running any other business, and it's actually harder, and you have to jump through way more hoops and have like strange expectations. Like people think that means you don't get paid, or really antiquated, dumb things like that. So I always say he tossed me the keys to a car with no engine in it and said, "See what you can do with that." So now, well over 1,000 amputees, and 11 years later, here we are. And what we do is we get prosthetic limbs for amputees that have no health insurance or no prosthetic coverage. So Medicaid, for instance, that's health insurance. In a handful of states in America, does not cover prosthetic care for adults. So Texas, for instance, that's their Medicaid scenario. So we've helped hundreds and hundreds of people in Texas. Big state, there's a Medicaid issue. So yes, so that's very quick how it came to be and fell from the sky into my lap. Like I said earlier, huge blessing. I've always been a pretty purpose-driven guy, as we've established, music and that kind of thing. But it kind of gave my life a whole new purpose and a new kind of like, outlet for this, I guess, skill set, that I had been developing my entire life. These things that I was good at and passionate about. My job is basically this. Yes, we're doing an interview where people are going to be listening, hopefully. But I'm not saying they're not listening to your podcast. I'm just saying you can pick and choose which episodes you want, and hopefully they will choose to listen to this one. If you're
Yes.
listening now, thank you for choosing the Billy Brimblecom Jr. episode of Amp'd Up, hosted by Rick Bontkowski. Anyway, but so yeah, but we're just having a conversation. You know what I mean? We connected a while back. It took a long time. Here we are. So my job is really just this, and I don't mean giving interviews. I mean just having conversations and connecting with people.
Yeah.
Which is like what you do in everything in life. Definitely is what you do in music. It's the best part of music, other than the music part. You know. So yeah. Anyhow, that's what Steps of Faith does. Process is very simple. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah.
Quickly?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. I mean that's we've talked some prosthetic inside baseball. So yeah, again, no prosthetic cover. People come to us one of three ways. Either a lot of it's Googling prosthetic charity. Very small handful of us that do this kind of work in the United States, and all of us do it differently. And I'm friends with all those people. I say we are all part of the same necessary ecosystem. We are not in competition with each other. We are all trying to solve this huge problem that should not exist in America. People aren't fighting for knee replacements. I have a knee replacement. Mine's just on the outside. Why is this something that can't be computed to insurance companies? Anyhow, people come to us either directly, a third party in the form of like a family member or a social worker, or the clinic themselves. We have a very simple application, stepsoffaithfoundation.org. And yeah, it's just a written statement of the need. And we work with prosthetists all around the country. Again, we're based in Kansas City. We've started in Nashville, but we help amputees nationwide. We got a new heat map the other day. It's not been 50 states, but it's 40 something. We work with prosthetists nationwide. Those prosthetists donate their labor. If you don't know, prosthetists, you go to the mechanic, parts and labor are really clearly separated.
Right.
That's not how it works in prosthetic world. And actually a lot of doctors, MDs, it's also separated. It's like you paying 10 different line items. Prosthetic is a little more all in kind of one jumbled thing. So prosthetists donate their time. Those are the heroes of the story, the donors and the prosthetists. We are handicapped people without the prosthetists. I don't feel like a handicapped person because I have access to the right tools, but even the $60,000 prosthesis is useless to me if I don't have a great prosthetist that can make it fit to my body properly. So God bless Ottobock and our manufacturers out there that are making this stuff, but it's the prosthetists who know how to make a socket, align it, and make it work for your body. But yeah, and then the donors that put gas in the tank. So prosthetists donate their time and labor, and then we buy the prosthetic components to make up the prosthesis. We buy those directly. Anyway, there's some inside baseball for you, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a remarkable endeavor. And yes, I am tapped into others like yourself, other organizations, and I see it the same way that you do, that it's unfortunate that we have to have these organizations, these charitable organizations, these resources. But at the same time, I am very, very proud and inspired by the work that you're all doing. And I so much more appreciate the way in which you said it, very beautifully of we're not in competition with each other. Like we are all part of that same directive, that same, push to try to get people to thrive again, get people the things, the resources, the support systems that they need so that their lives can change in a positive way. And
Yes.
I so much appreciate all of what you do. It's a really, really extraordinary story in which all of these different elements, through Steps of Faith, through your musical background, through events like Thundergong, all of those things that have sort of arrived and funneled into this, this purpose where you are right now. And I'm excited to see where things go next for you, especially with the organization. And I very, very much hope that I will be attending next year that event. And it's been just a pleasure getting to know you better. Certainly, musician to musician, of course. And hey, I'm on a roll, man. I got Billy Brimblecom, and then next it's what? I don't know. Rick Allen from Def Leppard? Who knows?
Come on, your mouth to God's ears, right?
I'm putting it out there in the universe.
So Rick called me. The day I lost my leg when I was in the hospital.
Are you kidding me? That's a great
true story.
That's a great way to end this episode. You have to tell me about this.
Okay, so I'll be quick. So when I was in the hospital, I was there a few days before the surgery. Obviously, there the day of the surgery and a few days after. So all in all, I was there about a week. People from all over the country. I was 28 years old. People from all over the country. It was like the room was packed every night. It was beautiful. Such a terrible time was so beautiful because I was just surrounded by all these people that loved me. Anyway, Def Leppard the night before my surgery was playing in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And a friend had this idea, what if we could get Rick to, amputee drummer, get a hold of Billy? And I was like, dude, I basically, when I started playing drums in 6th grade, it was Def Leppard Hysteria, the first 2 Sammy Hagar Van Halen albums, and Guns N' Roses Appetite for Destruction. That's how I learned to play drums, playing along with those albums, headphones. First song I ever played live was Armageddon It by Def Leppard to my music class with 2 of my bandmates that played guitar. Anyway, so Rick Allen, he was going to come to the hospital.
Yeah.
This friend that works at the radio station that was sponsoring the show, still works. My friend Greg Tott, shout out to him. Didn't happen. They told me. I was like, oh, it's incredible. Talk about thought that counts. I was so moved. And so then my surgery happens the next day, and I'm back in my room, but out on a lot of pain meds. I just had my leg amputated.
Yeah.
Phone rings, and they're like, there's a call for you. It's Rick Allen. And I'm like, give me the phone. And on the phone, I'm like, oh, hey, man. I do remember the call somewhat. And I just was like, couldn't believe he was calling me.
Incredible.
Hello, Billy, it's Rick. And anyway, he was like, all right, mate, how about I call you back tomorrow when you're not so sedated? And I was like, didn't want to get off the phone. So I was like, that dude ain't calling me again.
And he did.
So the next day, I'm in a little bit better shape. Sure enough, about the same time, the next morning, he called me and we talked for like 20 minutes. So the funny thing, and it was beautiful. It was such a great memory. Such a fun, extraordinary thing to happen at such a terrible time. And so the funny thing is, Rick and I have a lot of mutual friends.
Oh, that's excellent.
And we've communicated through these friends. And even oddly enough, a few years ago, I talked to his wife on the phone for like 30 or 45 minutes. And she was like, so what is the ask for Rick? And I was like, because everybody wants to put you guys in touch. And I'm like, there's no ask. Here's what happened. And she was like, that's incredible. So again, what's the ask? I was like, I just want to tell him thank you. And just where I'm at now.
Yeah.
That's it, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, so come on, Rick. Allen.
Baby.
Anyway, he's a beautiful man.
What a great story. What a sweetheart. What an incredibly thoughtful thing to do for someone in your situation.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That just made my day. Billy Brimblecom, thanks for being here. Thanks for all you do. Stepsoffaith.org, or is it Steps of Faith Foundation? Stepsoffaithfoundation.org. Check it out. Donate now. We're going to say that twice.
That's right.
Donate now. And
that's right.
Hey, man, I'm going to see you on the next gig.
Let's do it.
I so appreciate, what you're doing, and even with Summer Breeze as well. It's cool stuff.
Yeah, man.
And don't be a stranger. And that's it. That's it for us today. I'm Rick Bontkowski. This is the AMP'D UP211 Podcast. I want to wish Billy and our entire audience health and happiness. We'll see you next time.